The Sony A7CR is a mini A7R in a more compact and stylish body. But despite that, this camera is one of the most underrated cameras in the market, today at least, in 2025. Now, most of that is due to the price, because $3,000, which is the asking price for this camera before tariffs, is kind of a weird spot. Because $3,000 you're pushing towards professional territory, and this camera doesn't have all the bells and whistles that a professional camera should have. On the other hand, however, the release of the R1X Mark III at more than $5,000 put this camera in the center of the scene again, because this camera with a prime of your choice is going to get you a lot more value for your money if compared to the Sony R1X Mark III. Now, this video doesn't want to be a review. There's plenty of reviews around, and it doesn't even want to be a super technical video because, again, you're going to find information all over the place. This camera is not new, so there's no reason for me to repeat over and over again stuff that others have said and probably have said better than I could possibly do. This is going to be my user experience in over a year of use of this camera as my main YouTube camera. The last, I don't know how many videos were recorded mainly on the A7CR for this channel, but also as a second body to my A7R5, a camera that is recording me right now and is a camera that I'm gonna be talking to you about in a future video. To get this conversation started, however, I want to flip the usual script and start with the things that I don't like about this camera, because the way you see those things are gonna dramatically change the way you're gonna see the usefulness of the camera, of this camera for you going forward. So I want to start with the most glaring of the issues, which is the back screen on this camera. Now, this back screen, yeah, it flips, it does all the things that you want from a screen, almost all the things that you want. This is not the A7R5 screen, but it's a good articulation screen. The problem is, for $3,000, you get a very low resolution back LCD, which per se wouldn't be a dramatic issue. Problem is, it's very hard to see once you have a bright source of light. Like under the sun, seeing through this screen is pretty complicated. Seeing if a shot is in focus or not is pretty complicated. And for $3,000, this is not acceptable. It's almost insulting. To make things worse, the EVF, which you see over here, it's there, which is good, but it's pretty small and isn't even that good. I mean, it's not about the resolution, because I've reviewed recently the XE5 review over here. The camera shares pretty much the same specs of the A7CR, although at half the price, and I wasn't bothered by those. The problem is this one is less nice to use than the XE5s from both back LCD and an EVF screen. So all your ways to frame your shot are basically underwhelming for the price this camera is sold at. And that is hard. It's a pill that is really hard to swallow. For some, another big issue is the lack of a second card slot. That to me is not that big of an issue because I've never had a card fail, knock on wood. So I'm maybe underestimating the potential issue, but it's not a dramatic issue as a second body. Aside from those things, the other missing feature that I felt the most is the lack of a joystick in the back of the camera, together with the lack of some customizable functions that I have on the A7R5. Now, this is a problem because I'm using two cameras together at the same time. I tend to shoot with two cameras and two lenses so that I don't have to swap lenses and do crazy stuff when I'm working. And so having a different control layout is pretty complicated to deal with, because sometimes you need to remember that you're using the other camera and the control that you have at your fingertip in the main camera is not there. You need to dive into the menu to change the setting that you want to change. That draws your attentions away from what you're shooting to get you focused on setting the camera properly. That is a potential problem. However, that wouldn't be a problem if I was rocking only this camera or two cameras with similar battery like this. So that may or may not be a problem depending on how you look at it. For me, as a second body, as a complementary body to my A7R5, it's starting to become a big issue because I tend to get distracted pretty easily when stuff like that happens. Now that is a pretty substantial list of stuff that I don't like, but despite all of that, I still think this camera is just fantastic. But before telling you why, a couple of words from the sponsor of today's video. The sponsor of today's video is Freewell with their Vlogpod 3K tripod. This lightweight and compact tripod weighs only 456 grams and is capable of holding approximately 6.6 pounds or 3 kilos. And it's very compact and lightweight when you fold it. It's got a double functionality. It allows you to mount either normal cameras, whether action cameras or mirrorless cameras, or phones, and everything is included in their 360 degrees ball head, which offers, again, 360 degree rotation with just one easy to handle and very sturdy locking system. It's got flexible legs, which allow you to go from your normal tripod setup to wrapping around a pole or a fence or something whenever you need flexibility. These legs are pretty sturdy and pretty easy to handle. Very, very, very good from this standpoint. It allows for a lot of accessories because it's got a 1/4 of an inch thread in each of its legs, plus one in the head, and also has two cold shoes. So super easy to add accessories while you're moving around. It also allows you to easily go from horizontal to vertical with just a click. You don't have to necessarily move your ball head. You just have a click and everything flicks from horizontal to vertical. I used it several times and it worked pretty well. And I was surprised to see how this tripod was really usable either as a vlogging tripod or as a normal tripod in every possible conditions. Now, of course, it's a compact one. It's not going to extend. It's not going to get you to crazy heights. It's your tabletop tripod, which is also a flexible solution when you're moving around. I really liked the design and I really like the way it's done. The only thing you need to be aware of is that it doesn't have a compatibility with Arca Swiss heads. That may or may not be a limitation for you, only you know. But if you're okay with that, this tripod really works. If you're curious, just go check it out and purchase it because it's not going to cost you a lot and it's going to get you a lot of flexibility. And so back to the camera. I want to start with the positives with the sensor, because the sensor in this camera is just spectacular. It is probably the best high megapixel full frame sensor you can possibly find right now in the market. Despite the sensor being, 5-6 years old, it's still incredibly good. High resolution, high sharpness, high dynamic range. It's really good. Depth of color, a lot of stuff that goes into the sensor. It's just spectacular. There are other good sensors around. I haven't tried all of them, so I cannot be 100% sure this is the best. This is, let's just say it's among the best that you can find. I freaking love this sensor. I don't love Sony's color science, but again, I'm a Fuji user since 13 years ago. That it plays a huge role in that. And maybe I'm going to get used to it. Of course, in a year, I have come around a lot of things and I'm starting to find my groove around the colors that I get from Sony. I now get much better results out of my camera right away. When I started with Sony full frame, I was literally screaming and crying every time I was seeing colors because it wasn't what I wanted. I'm starting to go to getting around that, and now I'm starting to get results that I pretty much like, although they're not like my Fujis. But the sensor itself is just spectacular. Another key factor related to the sensor is the fact that given its high resolution, you can use lower resolution RAWs. I tend to use a lot of the 26 megapixel RAW files, lossless compressed. I always shoot lossless compressed because To me, storage is an important thing, and that's why, to me, it's critical that a high megapixel camera allows me to shoot at lower resolutions, because you don't always need 60 megapixel files. That is something that we need to be honest about. If you're shooting weddings, you're not going to need 60 megapixel files. If you're shooting events, you're not going to need 60 megapixel files. The situation where you need 60 megapixel files are pretty peculiar. If I'm doing landscapes and I'm doing the landscape, not just a trip photography stuff, I want the 61 megapixel files. If I'm doing product photography, I want the 60 megapixel files. If I'm doing portraits in studio, I want the 60 megapixel files. Although I'm not going to use the whole resolution 99% of the time, I still want that, because it may turn out needing a huge print out of that. But aside from those scenarios, you probably won't need that much resolution all the time. Getting the possibility of shooting 26 megapixel RAWs for when you need a lot of files, that is a huge help. Because let's face it, storage is important for us. And let's just say you're doing weddings. A wedding, depending on where you are, depending on the type of wedding, depending on the way you shoot, you come back home for every wedding with 1,000 to 5,000 images. Multiply that by the amount of weddings that you're doing, multiply that by the size of a 60 megapixel RAW file. Your storage is going to explode every wedding season. For what? How many times you're going to be printing billboards out of a wedding? A wedding is a personal stuff. Most of the time, people won't let you use it for your personal use. And even if you want, they're not gonna end up on a billboard. And even if they do, a 26 megapixel file is probably gonna do it anyways. So saving storage is an important thing, because it's exciting to have a lot of megapixels. It also is counterproductive if you don't manage your storage properly. To make things even better, the APS-C crop on this camera gets you, guess what? 26 megapixel files. That means your set of lenses are going to get you your standard nominal range times 1.5. If you're shooting 26 megapixels, you're not going to lose anything, and you get your 200 is going to become a 300. Yes, you're not going to have the depth of field of a 300, but guess what? If you're doing a wedding, who cares? If you're doing an event, who cares? That flexibility for me has been crucial. It's been one of the most useful things that I got out of this Sony setup. It's not just the A7CR, it's also the A7R5. That to me is a key aspect, a key flexibility aspect that you can get out of this camera. When it comes to Sony, we all know the autofocus is incredibly good. It's probably the best in the market. Now, this is not as good as the A1 Mark II or the A9 Mark III, but those are stacked sensor or global shutter sensor. They have their own advantages, but for normal cameras, this is as good as it gets. That being said, however, it's not perfect. Like those who tell you that with Sony you get 100% of shots in focus, they're either lying or they're not stressing the camera enough. I found myself in a couple of situations where the camera had issues with focusing. There was one specific that I did not expect. I was shooting a home party, a celebration for a graduation, nothing fancy. It wasn't a garden. It was decent light. I was using my speed light, guide light to help the camera to focus. Or there was a huge chunk of the party. I couldn't get one shot in focus. And that was either with the A7CR or the A7R5 or the Sony 16-25, a lens that I love. It's just great. Or the Sigma 28-45 f1.8. There was a huge chunk of party that I had huge issues focusing on people. No matter what the setting, I tried everything, I just couldn't get the camera to focus. That is not crapping on the Sony's autofocus. This is probably the best autofocusing system, but forget perfect systems. There's no perfection in this world. But the real superpower of this camera is the combination of performance, power, and small size and weight. The portability and the power of this camera makes it a unique tool in the camera market, because there's nothing like that. Yes, you have small cameras, but they're not as powerful. Yes, you have small, powerful cameras, but those are fixed lenses. There's nothing like that. You have the flexibility of swapping lenses in a small body with a high megapixel, high performance body. That is not something that you find easily. I would get this over a brand new R1X Mark III. I'll get this over its twin sister, like twin sibling, A7C2. Because yes, that camera costs a lot less. And the reason why you have some of those underwhelming features is because the same body needed to be assigned to the A7C2. But with the A7C2, you're leaving behind resolution. You're leaving behind also video capabilities, because you would expect with a lower megapixel body that you get better video capabilities, better rolling shutter performance, better readouts, speed, but you don't get any of that. The A7C2 gets you less resolution and worse video capabilities. Because let's just say 4K 60, with this camera it's cropped 1.2 times. With the A7C2, it's cropped 1.5 times, meaning you're going APS-C. That to me is a huge no-no. Today in 2025, I can live with 1.2, although I'd love to have no crop at all on 4K 60. We're going to get to that in a second, rather than having a 1.5. So to me, there's no technical reason to get the A7C2 over this, even because even at higher resolution, this sensor does pretty well. Aside from the price, of course. And the price is definitely a huge factor, I understand that. And Sony made things worse by adding to the A7CR the useless grip that they sell in the same bundle. I would have loved to see this camera being $150 less without the grip, and then having the grip sold as an accessory. That grip sold standalone makes no sense for the price. But again, your mileage may vary in this. But still, again, to me, I would never pick an A7C2 over this. When it comes to me, however, despite the fact that I liked a lot using this camera, and I still think this camera is fantastic and is super underrated in the camera world, the fact is I started to use this camera more and more as a professional tool rather than a fun tool. Because whenever I need a fun camera, whenever I need a camera that inspires me, I always reach for my Fujis. I have the X-T50 today. I will get the X-E5 once it's available. Review that you can find on my channel. And so I started using this as a secondary body to the A7R5, and at that point I started feeling all the missing things that I don't have in this body that I have on the A7R5. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is selling the A7CR to get the A7V once it gets out. Now, I know nothing about that camera. No one knows, or at least the vast majority of people don't know, but I'm expecting a couple of things. I'm expecting a body that is going to be similar to the A7R5, meaning similar controls. That alone is already a good reason for me to do the switch, but I'm also expecting that camera to be faster with the readout of the sensor and giving me a 4K 60 without crop. I expect that to be the case because the competition is going that direction. If they don't, they're going to lose a lot of market. But even if in the worst case scenario, even if they don't do that and they give us an underwhelming update to the A7 IV, I would still get my best camera, which is the A7R5, and a secondary camera that has a control layout that is way closer than what I get with the A7CR. Now, granted, if I didn't choose to have my fun setup with Fuji, this camera would have stayed with me for a long time, because in the Sony world, this is as fun as it gets with camera bodies. Sony camera bodies are not inspiring, don't scream, hey, look at me, use me. They get the job done, they're great at getting the job done, but they're not inspiring at all. This is the most inspiring of the Sony bodies, and this is something you should not overlook, because I have the luck to be able to use different setups and get Fuji when I want Fuji, or Sony when I need Sony, or Nikon when I want to do something weird. Not everybody can do that, and so if you're sticking with a system and you want a fun camera, this is as close as it gets to have a fun, powerful, incredible tool. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Grazie, ciao, and I'll see you in the next one.